G'day listeners and welcome back to another week of the Keeper League podcast. With our AFL fantasy podcast that doesn't focus on the superstars, we focus on the lesser knowns and the players that are going to bring some value to your fantasy teams. As per usual, I'm joined by my co-host Kays. How you going, mate?
Very well, Hef. Yourself?
Yep, not too bad. Another great weekend of just watching footy. Went down and watched the under-23s showdown with Louis and Checkers from Lane Kicking. Been hanging out with those guys a bit for the last few weeks, just watching all the trial matches, so good fun. Blokes that definitely know their fantasy football, so follow them on at Lane Kicking, I think, on Twitter, and get around their podcast as well.
Now, I asked you to keep an eye on Ben Keys for me, and I had no correspondence. What's going on?
Yeah, I didn't see much of him, mate. To be honest, I wasn't really. It was a hard game because it was pretty average, really, because of the I guess the under 23s that are playing. Yeah. So he didn't stand out, but like it was crazy because even people like Chase Jones, like it was weird that he was even playing because Port, like all their youngsters, none of them played. Like anyone who looked like playing round one, and really for the Crows too, anyone that looked like playing round one didn't play. So it begs I guess makes me wonder that why was Chase Jones playing, and he could barely get a kick out there as well. So it was really concerning.
Interesting though, like I think sometimes good footballers struggle when the ball isn't coming to them well. Like when you actually have to go and get your own kick in a lower leg, sometimes it can be hard to adjust when your kind of level is a touch above. So
yeah, I don't know.
I wouldn't worry too much about
I was just wondering why he's actually playing if he's going to be playing round one, because it looks like no one else out there that would be playing round one was playing round one. So that's the only thing that was a bit concerning for me, because maybe he's not actually in the Crows' best 22.
I think he would have to be Chase Jones, especially.
Just the way they kind of the side that they fielded and then the way that he played. Just a little bit of concern there. That's all.
Interesting.
Anyway, so we're drinking some Remedy kombucha again tonight, Kays.
Secret sound ready?
Yep. And tonight we've got the raspberry lemonade flavour. So Kays will do his weekly taste test. What do you think, mate?
Delicious.
Yeah, it's not bad, is it?
It's just a nice little subtle raspberry flavour too.
Yeah, it's not too sweet, not too sour.
No.
It's beautiful.
Magnificent.
Yeah, so we'll move on from kombucha. Thank you, Remedy, for supplying us with some refreshments for this week's podcast.
Absolutely delicious.
And we'll move on. What else has been happening, Kays? You're putting out your keeper list still, aren't you, on the website?
I am. I have actually finished them all now. So we've got James from the coaches panel going out tomorrow. Then your boy HK Doss will drop on Thursday, and we're actually drafting on Friday night, and yours will be the final article out there. And unfortunately for listeners, Hef's list actually looks very good, which is quite sad.
Went, I got 18-3 last year, and I think the 3 I only lost because I didn't realise we were playing through buy rounds.
Yeah, 17-3. And where'd you finish, mate?
Third.
Yeah, you missed the granny.
Lost in the prelim. I think in the grand final I smashed everyone's score as well. It was a heartbreaker. But anyway, we'll have to see what happens this season.
That's ultimate footy, man. Or that's fantasy footy. You just got to be in the finals, and anyone can win.
Man, I can sit here and talk about woulda, coulda, shouldas, but at the end of the day, I didn't win, so I'm out for redemption this year. The Bad Dream stuff, we're still trying to get that up and running. So if you see any videos, just retweet those. Get in touch with Port Adelaide. I think it might be falling on deaf ears, but we'll have to wait and see.
You never know. Sometimes these things go real underground and then just sprout out of nowhere.
How long do we push it for before it just becomes sad?
I don't know. Maybe another week.
All right, we'll give it one more spin and see if we can get any traction there. All right, let's get into some news, Case.
There's been a fair few, I suppose, big name injuries over the last kind of week. So we've got 5 in our show doc here. So obviously Adam Treloar is the main one, in terms of real fantasy potential. A slight hammy for him. Then obviously Tim Taranto popped his shoulder out, and he's going to miss about 3 or 4 months, which is huge.
I read 5 months today. I don't know how accurate was that, but yeah.
It just gets worse every time. Zach Williams, also a bit of doubt about his Achilles and is in doubt to miss round 1, which is interesting. Sean Darcy having a few issues at Freo, and just a bit annoying for him. He just never seems to be able to put everything together in terms of his body. And Blake Hardwick's the other one who will miss about 3 months with a pec injury, so puts him on the back foot too. So do you want to kind of look at some of these ramifications, I suppose, Hef?
Yeah, we'll probably talk about Tim Taranto a bit tonight because there's quite a few questions about him. Adam Treloar, who do you think that affects if that hamstring is, I guess, going to keep him out for a while? Who do you think brings in and replace him?
Well, you kind of think that Sire's the next cab off the rank, or potentially Wills if he's around the mark. So
does it mean more midfield time for someone like Callum Brown as well?
You'd think so. he's just that smaller kind of mould, whereas Treloar's that big bustling kind of inside mid. Well, he has the speed, and potentially someone like Sy doesn't have that natural burst ability. They might just want that bigger body in and around the ball.
Probably keeps Rupert Wills in the side as well for longer too.
I'd say he's around that mark
even
too.
though he doesn't score that well. Those points per minute numbers are okay, and if he gets the tank up, although on the weekend it didn't look like he was playing anything different. So,
and it probably makes someone like Scott Pendlebury, who was potentially sliding out of fantasy relevance, just purely because of age, not because of anything else, just means that he might have to play a bit more on the ball. So could be handy for Pendle's owners.
Now, Taranto, there's a host of names, probably by far the deepest midfield in the AFL. So
yes.
Taranto's out. Doesn't really, I don't know, there's going to be someone to replace him. So a lot of people saying it's now Hately season. So it could be Hately coming in. Green on the weekend showed some promise too. With Green, everyone's gung-ho on him, but you've got to realise that Hately looked exactly the same last year in the pre-season as well, and couldn't crack into the side.
Off the top of the show, I just want to give a word of warning to all these people who are on the Tom Green train. Just calm down. Jackson Hately is, I would say, a better player. He was doing exactly what Green was doing last year. Hately was absolutely stiff not to play basically every game last year. So this is his time to shine.
Not to mention, if you look at their junior numbers as well, Hately was playing against grown men and actually scoring proper fantasy scores like 120s and things like that. Whereas Green, his numbers were okay, but he was only playing in the NAB League and not scoring anything like Hately was as a junior. And then Hately did the same thing last preseason, looked like an absolute jet. Also, he went huge in the NEAFL. He didn't go under 100 in the NEAFL, did he?
No.
Yeah. And so he still couldn't crack a game. So we really got to cool our jets on Green because that GWS midfield is just crazy.
It's definitely the salary cap hype that's coming through it, and that's fine. I completely understand that. But the other guy that's a bit forgotten in all this is Jai Caldwell too. So, his numbers weren't as great as Hately's were last year in the NEAFL, but he's probably their second cab off the rank there, I think, just purely because of age and where the GWS list is. So, yes, Green's impressive. Yes, guys like Ash are impressive, but I think it's definitely Hately's season.
Looking at Zach Williams now, there's ramifications here as well because Zach Williams was one of those players that probably did move into the midfield a bit more when all the injuries hit last year as well. So it kind of opens another door there. But then you got to think about guys like, like Harry Perryman. Does he now go into the midfield, into that spot and kind of ruin those back? Well, I don't know he's got back status and not at footy, so it's okay, but ruin that DPP chance in the classic version, but also keepers going forward.
Yeah,
I'm big on that one.
I'm big on Perryman kind of stepping up his scoring this year with Zach Williams. The other guy who I'll talk about a bit later on is Heath Shaw. It kind of makes him a bit more relevant again because someone needs to play that genuine halfback running role. Kickouts, Williams did used to take a lot of kickouts. Basically might mean that Heath Shaw becomes super relevant for one more year.
And I had a lot of concerns over Nick Haynes, but if this injury is going to keep Zach Williams out, then he's back into contention for mine as well.
For sure.
Sean Darcy is just Lob, isn't it? Lob's just going to go huge as a ruck.
Or Lloyd Meek, you might have to start taking him as a Sean Darcy owner, which is a bit of a conundrum.
That one. So that's an easy one. Just keep your eye on Lob because I think he becomes I don't know, I think he's always going to be a keeper, but for most teams, but he's going to be actually a decent scoring one if Darcy's out for some time. Yeah. Now, Blake Hardwick, Kays, you're probably more versed on the Hawthorn kind of smaller defenders, running defenders, because you own Blake Hardwick, plus you always bang on about another heap of defenders that I wouldn't even know they were existed if you didn't talk about them all the time.
Look,
so what do you think is going to happen?
Well, I think we haven't really seen much of Jack Scrimshaw. He was injured a bit last year. Big recruit kind of in from Gold Coast the year prior. Actually has a bit of fantasy pedigree, so I'm going to be very interested to see what he does this year. I think he might kind of slot into that Hardwick role quite nicely. Potentially my boy Harry Morrison.
Oh, God, I was hoping he wasn't going to go there.
Could he get a reprieve? Could they throw my boy Jimmy Cousins back there?
No, none of them. They could.
Damon Graves was kind of impressive in their trial match last week. It's actually going to be very interesting. I think this is going to be a big watch game for Hawthorn this week, just to see kind of who slots into that halfback flank role, because obviously Hardwick was very important to their structure and how that all operates, but who kind of takes his position and points, we'll find out this week, I think.
I'm hoping it's Jack Scrimshaw. I'd love for that guy to just get a run.
Me too.
All right, let's have a look at the Marsh Week 2 round rewind. All right, time to review a few of the Marsh series games. We're going to go back to last Thursday night. Kays, I believe you were at the golf club still, so you couldn't actually watch your beloved Essendon play.
True. It was actually amazing that they won.
Yeah, I know. We would have thought this time of year that teams underdogs will be winning. Who knew? Yeah. I actually had a look at it, so I'll talk about a few players tonight, Kays, and you can let me know what you think about the Essendon players and whether I'm on the money.
Definitely.
All right, so let's start with West Coast. So Jamie Cripps, he had 70 from 84% time on ground. I spoke about him a couple of weeks ago. So I reckon it's just a great F5 type of option where he just gets just between 70 and 80 each week. But because he had such an injury-affected year last year, he's going to be slipping down in the ranks. He was averaging in the 60s last year. He was, like I said a couple of weeks ago, he was one of my players in my premiership year that I guess I needed at the kind of lower end of my forward line. And I think even in the last 4 rounds of the season, he went at close to an average of 90 for those last few weeks in finals time. So that's just gold if you can get a player like that has the potential to go up. Really, his floor should be around the 70 mark when he's fit and firing. And the only thing is he doesn't go big too often. But handy player to have, can have a few stints further up the ground, little runs through the midfield. Not big runs, but every now and then he gets it. So can be a handy option there, Kays. What do you think?
Yeah, handy depth player. I doubt he'd be kept a lot. So
being Pauls.
But as we said, I think we've talked about him a bit. But just one that you could probably get nice midway through a draft. Where people are kind of looking for either someone to break out or potentially a bit more of a bigger name. Whereas Cripps just does what he does each week and it scores you those 70s, which is quite good.
All right, moving on to the next player I had a look at, which was Nick Natanui. So, 64, which isn't great, but he only had 51% time on ground. Now, I know he does play low time on ground, but I still think 51% is even too low for Nick Natanui. So, this won't be accurate of what he'll play in the season. So, if he goes more around the 65-70% mark, which I think is probably what he's going to get to, especially if he can stay injury-free this preseason, actually get a preseason under his belt. Look, I think he can average in the high 70s, low 80s if he's actually fit, playing that kind of 70% time on ground, I think. Look, he's really one to think about if you need a ruck. We talked about this last week where you have to use at least 2 spots on Vardy, Hickey, now maybe even Bailey Williams or Oscar Allen could do some rucking too.
Yeah.
So they're not rucks in fantasy, so that really hurts you. So it's like I can actually see if Bailey Williams keeps tracking the way he will, I can actually see him being the backup ruck eventually as well. So it's going to be a bit tricky, especially if they're not rucks in fantasy. So you're going to have to use a whole heap of spots trying to get a handcuff, or whether you just kind of don't try to get that and you try to pick up someone like Pitney and hope Cruiser gets injured or something like that. Yeah. I don't know, that could be an option as well. But look, Nick Nato is there as a ruckman. He'll probably be in a lot of pools just due to the injury history. If you're desperate, which I know people in our league are, and actually traded to get him, he could be an option.
Yeah. Look, I don't think the time on ground thing's that worrying. So I was actually just looking at his stats then. So back in 2018 when he played the most footy in a season, he's played for quite some time, he averaged 80 from 57% time on ground. So
yeah. 57%.
Yeah, okay. Crazy. So
maybe he won't get up to that 70%.
Well, it doesn't really matter though if you're notching up those numbers. So he had 100 points from 56% time on ground and 115 from 63.
Oh, I did not know it was that low.
So he does not need much time. Like his tackle numbers, those games are through the roof, but that's what he does. So you're probably never going to get more than an 80, I suppose, from him. Because he's just going to go hard and then go home in a way. So, but as you said, especially if you're in a league where you play 2 rucks, he could be someone that you could pick up super late and get that pretty valuable ruck points that you need.
So I'm going to talk about a key forward in this next one, Kays, and that's Josh Kennedy.
Oh, yeah.
You're pretty happy about that. I'm actually finally going to talk one. So he pulled out a 93, but he had to kick 6 goals to get there on a completely depleted Essendon side. He had 88% time on ground, so he won't get anything much more there. I reckon this is kind of like his ceiling this season is those 90s. Essendon absolutely rubbish. No Hurley after 3/4 time. I don't think this is going to be a realistic reflection of how he's going to score this year. But look, there's good signs that he's actually fit and could do something this year as a forward.
Man, I talked about it in the pod. I'm quite keen on JK this year.
Yeah, he'll be available in a lot of leagues.
Which is what you want. And, we're crying out for F4s, F5s. And if he plays 20 games this year, he's going to average you 70, 75.
You're not wrong with the low on forwards. I'm actually in the middle of a startup keeper league draft at the moment, offline one, and there is nothing left really. I just took Lipinski in the 7th round because there's absolutely no forwards left. Yeah. So, it's quite dire out there. So you're going to be picking up a lot of players like this, I think.
And he's going to be ranked so low from his scores last year. So I think you're not going to pay overs for him at all. You're going to get him super cheap, super late, and if it works out, you're going to look like a genius. If it doesn't, you haven't lost anything.
Correct. All right, let's move on to some Essendon players. So Will Snelling, Kays, he had 20 possessions, 7 marks, 7 tackles, and 2 goals for an 113. So he went up 1.3 points per minute. So for me, he becomes now a real watch list player. So we talk about this. We've talked about this quite a bit on the podcast. So he has awesome state league numbers last season, 100 plus averages in the SANFL and VFL last season before getting picked up in the mid-season draft. He was in the best 22 at the end of last year for Essendon and played in their finals game against West Coast, wasn't it, where you got done over there?
We got smashed.
But anyway, good signs because he's in the best 22. I think he could be a handy late pickup as a forward, I reckon.
Oh, I'm massive raps on Will Snelling. I think he hasn't put a foot wrong since he's been at Essendon.
Yeah.
Averaging 100 plus in the SANFL and VFL last year, that to me speaks volumes. He's slotted into the AFL level with no issues at all. And I think just where Essendon are at the moment with their list, if you look at their injury list that came out today, like they've still got so many good players on that. So I think guys like Snelling and a couple others we'll talk about later, they're going to get opportunity early in the season. So once they're in there, I think it's up to other people to kick them out. And I think Snelling, he was playing in that side late last year. For me, he's easily best 22 at the Dons, and I think he's someone that he's obviously going to be available in a lot of leagues because he was that mid-season addition to their side. So I reckon you could get a real bargain with Snelling this year.
We bang on about his SANFL numbers and his VFL numbers from last season, but it's a pretty different role. He was playing pretty much full-time mid in those games, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And now he's not probably going to play that role at Essendon, do you think?
No, but early on he can. Early on there's a fair chance he's going to be pinch hitting in that midfield.
So that was my next question. So if the injuries keep rolling the way they do, who's really left to come in? Because I thought players like Zach Merritt was supposed to be out, but he played last week. There's Heppel still out, and then Zaharakis probably plays in defence anyway. Is there that much? Is there any other midfield side?
There's a few more. I'm trying to get the AFL injury list up, but the website links down. So
that's no good.
There's plenty of spots up for grabs, man. And they're not going to rush some of these guys back in here.
Yeah, that's true.
So on the list still, you've got Heppel. There's not too many other guys actually. Mitch Hibbard, but like a lot of these guys who are now off the list are kind of coming back in.
They're pretty underdone.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
those guys aren't going to get as many midfield minutes. They might be playing, yes, but you're going to need guys like Snelling and whoever else is bloody fit at the Bombers to kind of do a bit more grunt work than they would normally. So, it might be a guys you play early and then maybe trade off if their value starts to taper off later in the year.
Yeah, not a bad plan if you can find someone to buy them. We'll move on to Cole Langford. So he'll be an interesting one, I guess, with people like Dyson Heppel injured, and if they do come in the same kind of guys being underdone. So he rotated between forward and midfield, and he had 94 points from basically a full game. So if Dyson Heppel is out, he's the one who probably, I think, most likely to see a spike from that midfield time. Parrish might spend a bit more time in the midfield this year, but then it means Langford will probably take that mid-forward role that he played last year as well. Could be handy because he's probably likely to keep a mid-forward role as a fantasy player. So I reckon he becomes another one who's like a good late viable option.
Yeah, I kind of wrote him off last year as a bit too slow, and he couldn't really get a spot in that Essendon side, which is a bit of a worry. So really impressed, or really happy, I suppose, to see that he could actually pull out those scores. Without kind of watching the game, I don't really know exactly what kind of role he played, but it was good to see him kind of get back to what he did 2018. So if he's obviously, if he can be fit, up and firing at this time of year, it's just about taking the opportunity, and he could be quite handy.
The next player we'll talk about is Mr. Preseason himself, Jordan Ridley. So really good signs again. Last preseason, he went mental. Yeah. The difference is last preseason, he was rotating through the midfield. So he was part of a midfield rotation from memory last year in the JLT series, I think it was called back then. Yep. This time he was playing on halfback flank. So playing the defender role that he probably was likely to play until something else happened. We'll talk about that in a sec. 97 points, 21 disposals, 7 marks, 5 tackles, playing in defence. Now, I've got written here, could slot into McKenna's role, but McKenna turned up back on our shores this week.
Yeah, he's back, so that's good.
So that could put a line through that one. So we'll have to wait and see there. But look, there was no Sard and no Redmond in the Essendon defence on the weekend as well. Are those guys injured too, Case?
No.
They just didn't make the trip over.
Sard made the All-Stars team.
Oh, did he?
Yep.
Okay,
I don't know what Redmond was doing. But, I'm just not sure about where he kind of fits in if Essendon are full strength. So, yes, he always does this each preseason, which is awesome. But at the same time, I think that, McKenna and Sard are going to get those half-back flanks. I think Redmond is safe as houses to lock down that back pocket role. Where Ridley fits in, does he kind of steal like a Guelphy spot or someone else? I don't know. So
it's not set in stone, but I reckon there's some potential there. He has been for a while now, though.
Oh, I'd be more than happy to take him this year as a flyer.
Yeah.
No, it's just like, where does he sit? I'm not too sure just yet. I'm pretty excited to see the Dons play this weekend.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next game, K's. GWS versus Sydney. You look at this one?
The Sydney Derby, the Battle of the Bridge, pre-season edition.
Whatever you want to call it.
Yeah, it's pretty exciting stuff.
So hyped up.
Sydney were poo. But GWS, they were all systems go. So, as I touched on earlier, he's sure. Honestly, back to his best, 110 points at 1 point per minute, which is fantastic. So, as I said, I wrote him off last year. I thought there was his last year. It wasn't. Obviously, I reckon if the Giants won, he would have gone out on a high, but I think he still thinks as a sniff that the Giants can win it this year, and I don't disagree with that. But look, 25 touches, 19 kicks of those 25 touches, which is classic Heath Shaw. 10 marks, just doing that little chip around in the back lines. Obviously, as I said earlier, with Zach Williams out, I think his numbers will potentially improve a bit or definitely stick around that, what he averaged, 80-odd average last year, which is absolutely fine.
Yep.
And with him taking the kick-ins, I think he's almost a must-have if you're flag hunting this year.
Yeah, if you're chasing a flag this year, all you have to do is take one of those, draft kind of hype players from the 2019 draft. Take someone like a Butterick or someone that's kind of got a bit of hype going to preseason, an Ash or something like that, and offer the trade up for Heath Shaw, and you've got yourself an 80 defender for this season. And should take you close to a flag if he remains fit, because I can't see him dipping below the 80 mark.
No.
And those 80 average defenders are gold when you're trying to flag up.
Correct. Obviously, my boy Jackson Hately, 85 points at 0.9 points per minute. Look, I think it ended up being a genuine audition for Tim Taranto's role in the end. And as I touched on earlier, you can hype on all you want about Green, but I'm pretty confident it's Action Jackson season. So a little bit naughty with his touches. He had more handballs than kicks, which is not great, but got forward, kicked the goal, laid a couple nice tackles. So as I said, absolutely dominated the NEFL last year. He only had one score under 100. I just double checked that. Averaged 115, I think. So he's absolutely a ball magnet. Deserves his chance in round one, and I reckon he will get it. So if he's floating around in pools, I'd be taking him with my first round pick.
Yeah, I reckon so too. He's at that point. We bang on about NEFL scores not being as competitive as it really should be, but if you look at someone like Jordan Dawson, who's someone we kind of identified on the back of last year, and in hindsight, that looked like a no-brainer there. I think Hately's kind of this version of that, where it looks like he's actually going to take that next step.
He's standing out too well to be a fabrication of what he could do.
Correct.
Rightio, Tom Green, the other hype boy, 76 points at 0.8 per minute. Everyone's talking about him, and it's probably... People were surprised. They were like, oh, where's this Tom Green come from? Well, if you listen to us, we were telling you about him, November.
In the top 20 draftees mini episode for members.
So 2 goals, 21 touches, a bit of a warning sign, just like Hately there. 6 kicks and 15 handballs. So not the kind of ratio we like to see, but, first-year player just doing his team thing. I think that's fine. I reckon he plays that support role. Hately will get the first crack. I can actually see him playing in round 1, but can I see him jumping straight into Tim Taranto's spot? No, thank you. So he's been a bit of a sleeper in some circles, but not anymore, and probably has to be a lock if you're playing the salary cap format.
He's kind of undervalued because he was an academy selection, so he was always going to go to a bit different bow because GWS couldn't kind of let him slide, but they could take him with this basically their first pick of the draft, and because they made the grand final, they could trade up and took him a bit earlier anyway, using their points. But anyway, so he's a lot better than his draft position suggests. That said, this year's draft wasn't anywhere near the depth of talent as the previous year's draft as well. So someone like Hately or even Caldwell go in this year's draft, they go a lot earlier than they would have in this year's draft anyway. So around the same spot as Green went. So I know that everyone kind of thinks that's the reason why he's not hyped enough and stuff like that. But the midfield at GWS just rolls way too deep to reliably think about some of this. Long term, I reckon he's a gun, but they're going to have to trade some of these players away, or some people I just can't see how they all fit in and all dominate midfield wise. So that's the concern you've got with Green. Yes, he's a gun, but where does he get the opportunity?
Yeah, I think he's going to make it count now while he can, if he does get that chance. But, once again, we saw Harley get a sniff last year, so don't be too excited about going super early on him. If you can avoid kind of pushing him back late, I think kind of let him roll.
Yep.
Sam Naismith from the Swans returned. He had 67 points at 1 point per minute. Hasn't played AFL for 2 years after just having a shocking run with injuries. Could he actually be the number one ruck for the Swans? So he's kind of come from nowhere in a way. But 2017, I had him as a rookie in our league. He was kind of showing all the right signs. Back then, he was mid to early 20s, so it was going quite well for him. Then obviously the issues happened there. So look, he only averaged 58 in his last full season in 2017, but was showing some good signs. Had 28 hitouts on the weekend, which was actually 5 more than Sauce. Sinclair and Noel both played as well, but they only had 12 and 14 hitouts between them. So interesting to see kind of where that all sits this season for the Swans. He gets around the ground pretty well for a big guy. I think this week is going to be massive if you are a Callum Sinclair owner or kind of need another ruckman waiting in the wings. Could Naismith be like someone who just comes out of left field and jumps Sinclair for that number one spot? I'm not too sure, but at the same time, it wouldn't really surprise me if Sydney played 2 big guys potentially, or I know Sam Reid does it quite well as that backup ruckman, but I'm quite interested to see what happens this week with Sydney and Sam Naismith and see if he gets another chance at the number one spot.
Yeah, I think Sinclair and Naismith both play. I think Horse likes to play 2 rucks when he gets the chance and when they're fit. So I reckon they're both in the side. I reckon Naismith probably takes the number one ruck, and I think Sinclair spends a bit more time up forward just to kind of protect him a little bit more as well.
Because he is quite dangerous as a forward,
exactly.
Sinclair. Yeah.
With Buddy out too, I know that they've got, you talked about Reid, and they've also got Blakey, sorry, keep getting those two the names mixed up. Blakey up there as well. But I think Blakey can play that third tall really well if he doesn't have a key defender to lock him down. That said, Blakey did play as a key forward on the weekend with the side in, but I don't know. I think he's more damaging when he doesn't have to play as tall. I
think this week's the one you want to watch for a few teams who you're a bit unsure because they're probably likely to play a bit more of their stronger team.
For sure.
Harry Cunningham, 74 points from him at 0.8 points per minute. Come back quite nicely, and he's just really underrated for me, always has been. So he's only 26, averaged 80 last year and 75 the year before, which was his actual full season. Struggled a bit with injuries last year. Plays a lot taller than he is, but really does accumulate the ball well. 21 touches for him on the weekend. I think he's going to be one that's going to be in a lot of pools. So we've talked about a lot this preseason. May not be the sexiest pick. You may kind of just go, oh, look, I'll take someone else. But if you honestly want someone who's going to play every week, basically score that 75 to 80 each week, Harry Cunningham is your man. He's fit now. I think he's going to be one that kind of blossoms this year, especially seeing as Sydney lost a few guys from their defence.
Yeah.
I think he'll be one that takes on a bit more responsibility and could be a very handy asset to your backline.
Yeah, I reckon if he didn't get injured last year, he was going to blossom last year. He was going to break out then. So I reckon this year probably will be Harry Cunningham's year, especially with the state of Sydney's list as well. There's not a lot going around there, so he should get his fair share of the pill. Yeah, get on board, I reckon.
For sure. And lastly, Jordan Dawson. I don't know. Whoop, whoop, whoop. Where's the hype music? Hype Town, he's arrived. He's the mayor of Hype Town. Is he too good for the pod now?
He always has been. But I'm going to tell people to call their jets because Lloyd wasn't playing and those guys are going to eat points off of each other when they are playing. So
97 points at 0.8 per minute. It's not too bad, man.
I think he was on like 88 at three-quarter time though as well. So he did a classic Dawson. Mm-hmm. And I'm just worried about how Lloyd is going to affect him because we saw them really affect each other at the end of last season. Lloyd just fell off a cliff and Dawson wasn't going anywhere near as big as he was when he was playing kind of more of a midfield role.
So is this a score that we could see him emulate in the season?
Oh, well, yes, he could score a 97. An average, do you mean?
Yeah.
Of 97. I don't think he's going to average that high, no.
What's his average?
High 80s.
Okay.
88 I'm going to go with.
So call your Jets.
Yeah, a little bit.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Next game.
All right, Fremantle versus Carlton. So I've got to have a look at this one. I've got the kid to bed and actually, got on the couch and had a couple of beers and had a look at this. So, Lachlan Schultz is the first player I'm going to talk about. So he had 107 points. He was absolutely everywhere. Sorry, he had 4 goals from 14 possessions playing up forward. Had a few touches pushing up to the wing. I'm not sure if that was like a high half forward thing he was doing. It actually looked like a few centre bounces from memory. He was actually starting on the wing though, so that was interesting too. Look, a lot of players out. Walters was out. He's usually up forward. Fife was out of the midfield, so that kind of caused a few people to play in different spots, which probably gave him a free rein up forward. But look, just because he scored so well, not sold yet. You can't be sold on like a smaller type forward like this early in pre-season. There's always a few that kind of really stand out. But I definitely want to see him play again, and I've added him to the watch list just in case he can emulate this.
Yeah, someone who I had was nowhere near on my radar, but averaged a reasonable 80 points last year in the waffle, which is good going. So
for the waffle it is.
For the waffle it is, yeah, for sure. And there's a few hundreds in there as well. So, I don't know. Fremantle was a bit of a funny one for me as to who's actually in their best 22.
Yeah.
Another one for me just to watch this week and see how they line up with a few more of their better players in.
Yeah, not one that I'm really expecting to go big in season, but he just did enough to kind of make you have
just
a look.
For a sneaky late pick?
Yeah. Maybe.
Yeah.
He doesn't kind of play the role that I like to pick up, but who knows?
You don't like anyone that plays forward, man.
Yeah, unless...
Now you're being mean against small forwards.
Unless
so you hate big forwards, you hate small forwards.
Unless they have a clear run in the midfield is the only type of forwards I like picking up. Or I pick up key forwards really, really late with my last picks. And
look, he's getting on the key forward train. Getting on the key forward train.
And expect to drop them the season after. They're just hole fillers, mate. All right, let's talk about Blake Acres. So he had 104 from 69% time on ground. So that's some pretty good going there. Started on half back, which was interesting, but spent some time on the wing too. Here's another bloke that was just everywhere for Fremantle as well. I really like him for 2020. I can just, new club. Looks like there's a few outside roles available for him. I can just really see him taking his fantasy game to the next level this season. Not
surprised. I was keen on him last year. Obviously, didn't work out at St Kilda. Seems to have kind of got that fantasy-friendly role, which we know he can play. Yeah, I'd be super keen if I was an Acres man.
I don't really want to talk about this next guy, Kays, because I hate it when I give you I told you so.
Come on.
All right, let's talk about James Aish. So
yes.
Hell must have frozen over because Kays actually got something right for a change.
Get most of it right. Maybe just a year too early sometimes.
Aish, look, he's playing on the wing, 100 points at 1 point per minute. Darcy Tucker not on the side, so that could be something to think about. Well, yeah, but he won't be injured all season.
True, but then by that, James Aish will be like a premium mover in the midfield for Fremantle.
Yeah, who knows? But look, he could actually compete for that wing role if he doesn't have it locked down already.
It's his.
But, we'll have to wait and see.
The coach loves him. He's just dominated a Marsh series game. The other guys are injured. This is Aish season, man.
I think you might be onto something here,
yes.
Case.
And he's a back in Ultimate this year.
Oh, beautiful. Well, if he's available, then he's one to jump on.
Get on board.
He's probably going to be available in our draft too, so it should be a good get, I reckon.
Please, yes.
All right, let's get on to someone I'm dying to talk about. That's Andrew Brayshaw. So he led the midfield brigade on the weekend. He had 90 points at 1.2 points per minute. So still only had the 60% time on ground. This concerns me. What was good about it was that time on ground was spent in the midfield. So that's good to see. Only averaged 71% time on ground last season. So if he goes at this point per minute scoring, he's going to be fine. But look, there's a number of reasons why this may have been low. Really, it could just be trying stuff out in the pre-season. Fitness might not be at full scratch yet, or it just could be the way he plays. I'm hoping it's not that one. But look, let's hopefully he can push those midfield numbers up. But yeah, the positive was that his role was a full-time midfielder. Didn't have none of that going forward rubbish. Played him in his best position and pumped out a decent score.
Is it Acres, Aish, or Brayshaw season?
Brayshaw season, obviously.
I think it's Aish season.
Oh, fuck. No bias shown there. Adam Chair is another one that a lot of people are talking about. So he started in defence, which was a worry, but spent more time in the midfield later. He had 83 from 67% time on ground, which is positive signs for this year. So both of those guys played pretty low time on ground. So hopefully that's just not a sign, and they were just trying to get people through the midfield and get him through the game. Look, he looked class though. Chera for me is, and it kind of worries me a little bit, he's just real class. So great decision making, good skills. I'm just not sure he's an accumulator yet. He's almost seems to be a quality over quantity at the moment, but I have every confidence that could build and he could become a good fantasy scorer. He did float in and out of the game a little bit as well, so he had little patches where he'd score really well and then would go missing for a little bit. Look, I'm sure he's going to turn into the 90 plus type season eventually, per season per average, but I don't think it's going to be this season or anything like that. I still think we're going to get some pretty lean scores every now and then from Chera. He's not going to be the breakout candidate. I think that people are hoping that he's going to go 100 plus and stuff like that, but I do think there's potential for the future here.
Look, as a backman in fantasy, fine. You can still be...
He's not going to be a backman for long, though.
Yeah, but you can still be a bit shit this year and get away with it as back status. So, look, if you're keen on him, even if you think that's going to be next year...
He's a definite keeper if you've got him.
Yeah, so, sure. I can't see why you wouldn't be keeping him, and it's going to be hard to get him off someone going forward, I think.
Mark Pitney moving on to Carlton now. So he scored 65 but only spent 40% time on ground. Cruiser sat out the whole second half, which is interesting as well. Probably just another one they're trying to get through without getting injured. So he went at 1.4 points per minute, Mark Pitney did. So he had 19 hit-outs in that time too. For me, he offers more than just a handcuff to Cruiser. So if you own Cruiser and you're expecting Pitney to slip to the late rounds and you just pick him up as your handcuff, that's not going to happen. You're going to have to go kind of early on him, I think. You're going to have to get him, in your first probably 5 picks, depending on how many you keep and things like that. But yeah, you're going to have to get him kind of early. You're not going to be able to leave him to your last pick of the draft and just pick up your handcuff there because he offers so much more. And we know Cruiser's injury history as well. So there's a very good chance that he's number one ruck by the end of the season. And he looks like he's the number one ruck that could actually score reasonably well, Case.
Yeah, and he's a lot younger than Cruz too. So I am all over Mark Pitney as like being the perfect evil foil. Like go earlier than the guy who's got Cruiser because Cruiser's not going to last too much longer and you're going to end up having like 2 number one rucks on your side.
Now, the guy who owns Cruiser in our league is notorious for not taking a backup ruck or at least the right backup ruck that will actually play. So if you're listening to this right now, you need to take Pitney with your first draft pick.
Yes. Otherwise I will. Yeah. Even though I've picked one.
Definitely take Pitney first round, man.
But if you look at his scores in the NEAFL last year, he averaged 98, had games of like 144, 131, 121. The guy can go big, man. So I actually really like him as a prospect. Like I think it's the perfect time to jump on board and kind of get the next wave of number one ruck.
Could be this year's Tim English, Cave.
Well, no one's that good, but and Tim English is trading the house down apparently.
Okay.
Best preseason ever, someone said.
Isn't he like 90 kilos now?
Yeah, he's like a whole normal size human. Like he's going to be absolutely massive
instead of a beanpole.
But yeah, anyway, getting back to Pitney, I'm super keen on him this year. I think he can absolutely do some damage in the AFL.
All right, let's move on to Zach Fisher. So he played in the midfield and had 27 possessions. So obviously no Cripps, no Murphy. Probably not going to see this story come round one, but he did spend a lot more midfield time than Martin, which I think is a positive. So my concern was that Martin would come in and perhaps even push Fisher out of the side. But it looks like Martin was playing a lot more up forward, and hopefully we're seeing Fisher being... I guess Fisher was quite vital in that mid-forward role. Hopefully we're seeing Fisher push back into the midfield to play that full-time mid-role, which would be good for his scoring. Martin only had 50% time on ground, though, so that was the other thing as well that's a bit concerning. Look, hopefully he spends more time in the midfield. Don't get too excited due to the outs. Again, no Cripps because of the All-Stars game, no Murphy because of the injury. And I don't really know how much he's going to play this year, but look, it could be good signs. Does this every preseason, okay? So last year he was picked up with pick 3 in our draft because he had this huge preseason.
And now he's delisted.
Yeah, no, he's in my side and I'm going to keep him.
No.
Yeah.
Delist him.
No, I'm going to keep him.
Damn it.
Only because, though, I don't have much more to keep. So
Carlton is a really, really worrying sign in terms of that wing, half forward, even half back role. Like they just seem to have so many people of that same kind of stature, caliber, size. So, Fisher, Nunes, Martin, Cunningham, Kennedy, like there's so many of them. Yeah. So I want to watch them this week and see kind of maybe who's their best 22.
I think this time last year we had less of an idea though with all those players and where they're going to play. It looks like Cunningham probably is going to play outside half forward flank, maybe a wing if he's lucky. Kennedy's definitely going to play out forward. I think it's down to the last few. You've obviously got your Walsh, you've obviously got your Cripps. I wouldn't be surprised if Murphy maybe moved to a half-back flank or something like that this year. Although we say that every year with these older types and they generally end up doesn't happening. So it does kind of to me leave a door open. I think Curno's going to move out. That's another one. I think it does leave a door open for Fisher. I think is the direction they want to go. Fingers crossed it is anyway.
Yeah, he needs to show a bit more fantasy game, I think.
Yeah. Let's talk about David Cunningham lastly for Carlton. So he played on a wing. He had 60 from 64% time on ground. Not horrible, but I guess you'd kind of hope for more if he's someone you're going to be thinking about taking in your draft, unless it's going to be really late. The positive was he was playing on that wing, and he did a bit of that last year. So hopefully that's just a sign that that's a future role for him. Issue is he probably won't be that forward that he is in Ultimate Footy. I think he's a forward.
Yeah, he's a forward.
Yeah. So that's the only issue there. He might be a full-time wingman and not be a huge scorer going forward. But this year, if he's named as a forward and he's playing on a wing, there could be some value there.
Yeah, I really like Cunningham. He's going to be in our pool this year, and I'd like to take him, early-ish because I think he's got a fair bit of talent.
He seems to be best 22 clearly these days.
They like to play him. Yeah. So I'm quite hot on him in this season.
All right, and the last match of the weekend, that was Richmond versus Collingwood. Kay, did you look at this one?
I did. I watched it on the couch. So, starting off, Darcy Cameron, 107 points at 1.2 points per minute. So, really, all I was thinking when I was watching him basically dominate was why did he move to Collingwood? He could be Sydney's number one ruck this year and absolutely carving up. So, showed he can score, hold his own at the AFL level, kick 2 goals, 20 hit-outs, 7 marks, 4 tackles, genuinely did it all. So, has to be a must-have handcuff now if you're a Grundy owner. I don't think you really go out of your way to pinch Cameron as a non-handcuff just yet because, unless Grundy goes down, it's not really going to be that viable. But it's really going to come down to will Cox play or will Cameron play? So who is the better option up forward? Like Cox has showed he can do it in the past. Cameron did it pretty well on the weekend, kicking a couple goals. What do you reckon, Ev?
Cox has shown he can do it in one prelim final 2 years or year and a bit ago. Look, I think we're starting to see the real reason why Cameron was recruited, and they're looking for a Cox replacement. Someone who's got a bit more footy nous than Cox actually does and doesn't just rely on being 100 feet tall, sitting in the goal square. So I think they actually want to play him as a forward and a backup ruck, because I don't think Cox, despite being super tall, he doesn't really offer as much in the ruck because he doesn't have the tank to really go. Whereas I think Cameron can play a Cox role but be a bit more useful around the ground as well. So I think we might be seeing the real reason why he was recruited. Now, does that mean good things for his fantasy scoring? Absolutely not. No. But he might actually play, and he still doesn't offer too much more than a handcuff for Grundy, but he could be something worth taking earlier than last and taking it just to kind of have a bit of leverage over the guy who does own Grundy.
He's a ruck forward, so it's it's not the worst guy to kind of stash on your bench
but
if you need.
My point is that the guy who owns Grundy would really want Cameron. So if you could take him in a draft just to be a bit of a disruptor in your draft,
to be a bit sneaky,
and have a bit of value there, because who knows when he's going to come knocking for a ruckman when Brodie Grundy does a hamstring or something like that.
True.
Who knows? Move on to the next player.
Yeah, sorry, mate. John Noble, 88 points for him at 0.9 points per minute. Very handy little game from Johnny Boy. For me, he just looks like a really nice accumulator back there. 23 touches, 15 kicks, 8 handballs. We love that kind of ratio. For me, I think he's really locked in that back pocket spot at the Pies. One who's going to be in a lot of pools because he was a top-up player last year. I thought he was just really serviceable all of last year for the Collingwood backline. Can basically continue that on in this preseason after his 3 games there last year. So I think, Maynard, Crisp obviously will be the big drivers off halfback, but I think Noble can play a good part in your fantasy side as maybe a D4, D5.
He looks like a player that Collingwood want to use going out of defence, and he actually really commands the ball. So I've said that a few times in this podcast, but I really believe that. He's one that the players actually look for coming out of defence. So, one I think that actually could be best 22. I know he played finals for him last year, but it was only played the last 3 games and then 2 finals. So wasn't 100% sure when they've got like a fully fit list who comes in, plus the development of guys like Quainer coming through could jump into a spot like that as well. But no, I think he's actually in the best 22. Don't think he's going to score this well every week, but again, another one who's a handy later pickup for defenders because again, we know the scarcity.
Oh, yeah. And the last one for Collingwood is our boy Callum Brown. So you get the 68 points from 0.8 points per minute. Kind of wanted to see a bit more from him, really. Had the opportunity to get amongst it a bit more on the weekend. Had the 14 touches, 8 tackles, which basically made up half of his points. So we do love the tacklers, but I think he needs to jump into that midfield role. Now, Treloar is out for a few weeks. Is this his chance to kind of jump into that midfield and show something? Or will we see, those Sire, Wills kind of guys come in and take those potential points?
I think the latter is more likely. The good thing about Brown, though, is I don't think he's ever really going to be a full-time midfielder. Maybe later on in his career, but the next few years I can't really see it. The good thing, though, is he'll have stints and he'll keep that forward status and then boost those numbers up probably 10, 20 points a game, push into that 80 mark as opposed to going 60 every week.
Yep.
So I think whilst I don't think he'll be moving to a full-time midfield role or anything like that anytime soon, I still think he's going to be a handy option. And with someone like Treloar out, just kind of gives him a few more rotations through the midfield than he probably wouldn't get.
Yeah, and what I like about Brown is he's definitely best 22. Even, when you've got Elliott, Thomas, all those guys running through that side, he always is playing. So I think he's definitely in there. And hopefully you just want to see them, put a bit more faith in him and run through that midfield more.
Any
So
kid like him with the pedigree he's got, you're worth just snapping him up and holding on to him just to see how we go.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah.
Onto the Tigers. Jaden Short. Good to see this. This is the role we knew he could play. 103 points at 1 point per minute. Obviously, there was no Basher, so obviously his score's probably been a bit higher because of that, and it wasn't what we saw last year, but this is why all owners should keep the faith. 28 touches from him, 18 kicks, took the kick-ins. Will he do this in the season though? That's the big question. Or will it go back to Bash when he kind of comes in? So it's a tough one, because will there be the big tons like this, or will it just kind of be the 70s like we saw last year? So is a lot dependent on Bashar Hooley, but 2021, he's got to be going bananas, and it might be a frustrating year for you if you're holding him, especially while Hooley should be playing most this season. But you just got to keep the faith with him, even if it goes a bit sour this year.
Yeah, he's definitely next in line as that best fantasy scorer out of Richmond's defence. So whether it happens this year or not, it'll most likely happen when Hooley retires. I still reckon he's got a potential to go, 80 plus this year and become.
He could still be massive this year, because like Brandon Ellis is gone.
Exactly, he was more on the wing by the end of last year.
True, but kind of that.
Well, you're gonna have someone like Sydney Stack probably move up the role or something like that.
Yeah.
So there's going to be more opportunity as a result.
Liam Baker, another one that really impressed me last year, was very impressive on Sunday too. 102 points from 1 point per minute. Really the game I wanted to see from him, because he showed glimpses of what he could do last year and really took his opportunity on the weekend. So what's awesome about Liam Baker in 2020 is he's forward listed and was everywhere on the weekend, even played a bit down back. So 30 touches from him almost would have to be a PB in the AFL. Very nice outing, just racking up 30 touches even in a preseason game. The question is, will he get this kind of opportunity week in, week out in that Richmond side? It's a tough one. I'm not sure that he's going to kind of get the freedom like he did on the weekend. Obviously, there was a few good players out for Richmond in that All-Star game, but like Jack Graham's still on the comeback trail from injury. He could potentially take some midfield minutes there early on in the season. I just think he's someone you want to have in your side, because he's definitely handy. Showed it last year, and this is a game you want to see in the preseason from him.
Yeah, look, to me, it seemed like he was kind of just playing the role that Dusty Martin would usually play, and he wasn't obviously playing because of the All-Stars game. So it's kind of like they just chucked him into that slot and said, here, see how you go. For me, though, with players like, Butler leaving, that's his forward role, I think, that kind of opens up for him. He might see a few more numbers this year as a result of someone like Butler leaving, but I don't think the role that he played on the weekend is going to be suggestive of what he plays in the season.
Yeah, I'm still quite keen on him this year, especially with that forward status. So, one to monitor in your drafts.
Cool.
Sydney Stack, 61 points at 0.7 points per minute. One that kind of worked into the game and looked solid enough, I suppose. Someone like him is going to be available in a lot of pools because of where he was kind of coming to the competition last year. So, played a lot down back on the weekend, but all the pre-season talk was that he was kind of playing that forward role, kicking goals. So it's a bit of a weird one as to where he's actually going to sit in that Richmond side this year. I really like him. I think he's going to be a great fantasy player, maybe not this year, but next year and into the future. I want to look at him this weekend and see exactly where he's playing when they are playing more of a full-strength side. As a defender, I think he's definitely a must-take this year. But if he kind of plays that forward role, that's where it's going to become a bit of an iffy one. And if he's going to, his points are going to drop from what he was doing last year. But at least he will be in pools. As a back status player, I think he's one you can just roll the dice on. Might go a bit earlier than you want someone like him to go. But if you think he's got that potential like I do, I think you kind of have to go early on in this year's draft.
Yeah, look, he's not that. I don't know what it is about him. There's something about him that for me that just says he's not going to be a fantasy superstar, but he's going to be a great contributor for keeper leagues. So it makes me tentative to go earlier on him, because he's likely someone to be that will probably go in the first round of our draft, I think. And I'm happy to pass on him for that factor. I think he's ultimately going to be one of those quality over quantity types eventually. So, but I think he's still going to be a handy contributor to your keeper league teams. Going at your 70, 80 every week as a defender type thing.
He's a tough one, because obviously I've got pick one in our home league, so I'm probably leaning towards...
You were really hot on him earlier.
I was really hot on him earlier, and I thought I would take him almost pick one, but I was kind of, just what the reports have been coming through from Richmond this preseason. I also have pick 9 in the draft, so that's where I'm hoping if he kind of gets to there and I've managed to lock in Rao, maybe I'm happy to take the punt him in at 9, but still there's just that slight worry that he might not be exactly what you want him to be.
All right. Any other players you want to talk about from that game, Case?
Yeah, I suppose like there's been a lot of hype just from my eyes, like Riley, Collier Dawkins, Shai Bolton, Marlon Pickett. They all didn't really score very well on the weekend. They all had bad points per minute scores as well. So just a little trick, like these are the games you got to go monitor and like see how they go next week. Yes, but like RCD's been getting some massive hype because he's a rookie in salary cap. Pickett's the same. They're getting a lot more hype than they potentially should be, and we really haven't seen that scoring in their past. So just monitor them, but don't get caught up in salary cap hype is my kind of tip of the week.
All right, that wraps up all of the games from the weekend. We'll quickly talk about the membership and we'll go through a review on Apple Podcasts. But yeah, membership. So at the moment, this isn't a membership thing. This is public to all, but we're putting up the points per minute adjusted scores as well as publishing all our keepers from our Podcasters League daily for the next few days. All 10 teams will be out by Friday. We've also got the State League scores, the Drafty scores, the Breakout Tracker up there for you guys. Rankings and mini episodes came out a few weeks ago. I'm actually going to revisit my rankings over this week since we've had a look at every team. So we'll go through and update those. Probably Thursday night we'll have a look at those. So stay tuned for a few updates there. Again, the Gold Members Facebook group, that's absolutely going off still. More people kind of even just upgrading their memberships to get in on this. It's so awesome just to actually get advice, non-biased advice. It's actually so hard to put out, keeper questions, find a group of people to put out your keeper questions to, and that aren't in your league and don't want to just rip you off or take advantage of you. So,
correct.
And there's just a few blokes in particular, but most of the group in general, they just live and breathe this stuff and just love giving advice on this stuff. So it's good to actually see. Kays and I, we get on there as often as we can, but it seems to be going pretty mental.
Don't even need us.
It's hard to keep up. So we try to get in there as much as we can, but when we're working on the pod, it's just great to have our listeners who are on a similar fantasy level to us, absolute fanatics, to be answering questions on there too. So thank you to all our Gold members that are on there as well for making it such a great place and such a, positive environment for fantasy coaches out there as well.
For sure.
Each week we read out 5 Gold members, so we don't have time to read them all out in one podcast, but I'll read them out this week, Kay. So,
go for it.
Gold members to mention this week, Spontaneous Trade. It's a weird name that your parents have called you Spontaneous Trade, but
what do you do when your last name's Trade?
I know, you have to call your kid Spontaneous, I think, or I don't know if there's another word that could go before you. Dodgy Trade, bad trade, I know, good trade even. Yeah. Who knows? Daniel Miller, Brendan Scanlon, Greg Watt, and look, Calvin Bent from Dream Team Talk. So that's Cow. Even the professionals are signing up to the Gold membership service here. So look, it must offer something. So the proof's in the pudding, I guess. There. So have a look at that if you're interested. It also just supports the podcast as well. Keeps us going. Everything we make, we put back into the podcast. We've got some cool stuff in the works for our listeners too, on the back of some of the funds that have come into this as well. So just stay tuned to our socials and to our podcast over the next few weeks to find out what that could be. Look, if you're keen on signing up, all the join links are in the description. Just look below your podcast, whatever you're listening to it on. Click the link and have a look at the membership options. And if you're keen to give us some support, think about signing up, and cheers if you do. All right, cool. We'll move on to a podcast review. So again, we're down to our last podcast review, Kay. It's the last one on the list that we haven't read out yet. So if you haven't done it and you're an Apple user, jump on the podcast review. It helps us climb the rankings, all that sort of stuff, but also gives us something to read out on the pod as well, Kay. So do you want to read this one out?
Yeah, this is from Henry C. A true pod. This pod is excellent for finding the diamonds in the rough late in the draft. I won my league last year thanks to the additional info I got through the Keeper League. Their content was crucial in helping me decide who to target with my last few picks. Very engaging on social media and great membership content. Keep up the great work, fellas. Thank you, Henry.
And I talked to Henry quite a bit. We're in constant dialogue on the messenger, so I know who this is, and that's what we do for our members. Really, we're constantly in chats and take private messages and field private chats and all that sort of stuff to give you guys help. So jump on, and that's the kind of the stuff we're into. So
it's go time this time of year too.
Definitely, the inbox is lighting up on almost every minute. So it's no wonder I'm so far behind at work. Anyway, let's move on to the listener questions. Moving on to the listener questions. Quite a few coming in this week. Quite a few about Tim Taranto and Tom Green. Actually, a shitload. So apologies if you asked a question about one of those guys and we don't answer it, because basically we got we have repeats. Yeah, we did. We've probably already done it, to be honest, but we'll answer probably one or two of them anyway. All right, Kays, what's the first question?
From Scott Ridquist. How do you see Lipinski tracking this year?
I think he's an unreal talent. The thing that worries me this year is I just don't know where the extra points are coming from. So Bont, McRae, Dunkley, obviously one of the best midfields going around. Correct. The top three, absolute primo. They're your three starters. Then you've got blokes like Bailey Smith, who I think will really get a lot more midfield minutes. We saw at the end of last season he did. So you got him jumping in there. Mm-hmm. Then I know this is a bit of a stretch, but you got people like Wallace and McLean finally having a year where they're not affected by injury, I think, as well. So I'm not saying they're definitely going to move into more midfield time, but there's a chance that they could really hinder his numbers. I don't think he's going to go backwards at all. I still think he'll be around that 80 mark, but I'm not sure how much he'll improve. What do you think?
I'm massive on Lipinski. I just love him as a player, and I do agree with that call where I don't see where there's going to be a huge jump in improvement. But at the same time, as a mid-forward DPP going around that 80 mark, I think that's purely great.
The good thing, he'll probably keep forward status.
Yeah. That's probably the best
huge
thing about it.
Yeah.
And if he could be one of those great forward mids that's going to be, that 80, 85 average for a couple of years. And then, once a midfield spot opens up or someone gets injured, then he kind of comes in and just takes his game to the next level. So I don't think you're ever going to lose drafting someone like Lipinski. I think he's shown what he can do in a side that has been basically full strength since he's really been, playing that good footy. So I think he's a must-have if you can in your keeper leagues.
Okay, so I'm going to ask you this next one. This one's from Scott Cutler. You can only keep one, and I know you owned both of these guys in the preseason. Am I correct?
I've owned both of them previously.
Stevenson or Rockcliffe. So you can only keep one.
Yes.
Who are you keeping?
Right. Well, I traded out Rockcliffe this preseason. I actually delisted Stevenson the year prior, so not the greatest decision.
Well,
but
he missed like 10 rounds last year. So.
Naughty sports bet, Jaden. But look, I think that Stevenson could actually really go to another level.
Same.
I think that he could be a genuine, fantastic mid of the future. Will it be this year? I don't know.
Yeah.
If you're going for a flag this year, I think Rocky's one that you might like to have in there because there's nothing saying that he can't go like 120 or 100 even this year as a mid.
Yeah.
But he's probably just one badish injury away from, basically
think the end is nigh with Rockcliffe. You're right. He's still going to go probably around the 100 mark, but he's not far away, I think, from falling off a cliff sometime soon.
Yeah.
Whereas Stevenson, I can see being a gun for the future.
For me, look...
Depends where your team's at.
Yeah, I got rid of Rocky for pick 9 this year and a couple other selections down the line. So, for me, I'm happy to... My team's probably not quite there this year, so I'm happy to give Rockcliffe to someone who thinks they're around the mark. So... And it wasn't the evil nemesis who I always trade my players to,
and
FYI.
Let him win the flag.
No, but I think there's enough risk to not take Rocky in terms of his body. It depends where you're at, Scott. But if you're going long term, I think I'd take Stevenson.
Yeah, okay, I agree. Rocky has to be one of the most owned players in our league, I reckon. He's swapped around so many teams since our initial draft. So I wonder how he goes in other leagues because by the sounds, there's lots of trades involving him we get asked about as well. So I think he gets thrown around a lot too because he goes big but he's so untrustworthy. So he makes him a good little trade option there, I think. Kays, Russ2468, regular on the questions here. Who in your home league has the kiss of death when it comes to trades? A league mate offered me Blake Hardwick and another coach, Tim Taranto. Shortly after the offers, they went down with long-term injuries. Thankfully, the trade offers were rejected.
Well done, Ross. I can't believe you turned down Tim Taranto. Must have been one hell of a bad deal the other way. Look, I probably am the worst trader in the league, just in terms of what's happened. I traded out Josh Dunkley last year, then he decided to go big. That's probably the one that hurts me the most.
Yep. You literally traded him out the week before he got moved into the midfield and just went huge. So I think he got a 150 the week after you traded him out. He had about 76, I think, the week before.
Yeah. So that's how
awesome.
That's how well it went. And I haven't heard the end of it since. Crazy enough, I actually traded in Blake Hardwick this preseason because I actually thought he as a nice little breakout potential back as your kind of last keeper for me. So I was like, yep, I'm pretty keen on what Blakey boy can do this year. Obviously, now I've wasted a pick on that because I can no longer keep him. I don't think I can justify exactly, holding someone who's only going to play half a season as that risky last keeper spot. So I've now had to waste another pick to get in Hayden Crozier because my backline's pretty dodgy. So I'm happy I've got Crozier, and I'm actually quite keen on him this year. So happy with that. But I've kind of got the kiss of death so far this pre-season with my Blake Hardwick trade.
Yeah, you're definitely the person I would say has the kiss of death. But it's probably to do with as well, you trade the most because you just get so bored with your players. So
I do.
You're probably more likely to have
you can't get them all right.
Luck. Well, you're just going to likely to have a lot more bad luck if you've just got the most numbers of players rotating through your team, I think, as well.
Potentially true.
Yeah.
Matt Punch, thoughts on Will Snelling, Hef?
Look, we talked about him before, so we won't go too long on him. But yeah, if you can cement his spot in the best 22, which I think he should, he'll be the handy F4. I said F5 earlier, F4, F5 in that range. I think he'll be handy to have in your side.
For sure. Next question.
Samuel Savides, new keeper league. Where in the draft do you pick Taranto now that he's out for 3 months? Oh, the first Taranto question? Oh, no, we've had him mentioned once before. So anyway.
But this is actually a good question.
Yeah, this is a good
I
question.
don't think he changes much from my current rank. So I ranked him at number 2. I'm pretty sure you did too, Hef. Now, he might be one that's dropped just a bit slightly if you want someone who you know is going to play a full season. So maybe like someone like Josh Kelly for me would kind of jump up from 3 to 2. But his age and what he's done in his short career, I just don't think you can be as worried as potentially you were with someone like Tom Mitchell, who, leg injury is a bit more tough than just a shoulder injury. So the shoulder injury doesn't worry me as much as like someone who's got regular soft tissues or a knee or a broken leg. So he might drop down your rankings slightly, but no matter where you got him, I'd actually kind of hold firm on him because yes, you might not have him for half this year. Yes, he might come good for the second half of the year, but depends. If you think you're going to win it, if you're going out to win it this year, then potentially let him slide. But if you think that he's someone that you want to have in your team for the next 10 years, then hold firm on him, I think.
I mentioned this earlier, but I'm in a startup keeper league draft right now, and we started on Monday, so he got injured on Saturday. Mm-hmm. Tim Taranto still went in the first round, even though it only came out today, being Tuesday when we're recording. So a day ago, he still went in the first round. I think now he slides a little bit, probably to your second, maybe third. I think if you pick him on the third, you've got a steal there. Yeah, really.
Oh, you got a massive steal,
but I don't think he's going to get there. Yeah. So anyway,
it's a keeper league, so just keep that in mind. If you actually really, really want him, sometimes you have to pay a little price.
Yeah, correct.
Stuart Churton, he actually seconded up his tweet that he sent earlier on
asked us
and just wanted
questions.
to double down. So put this to you already, but he wants to throw in a third dimension to a question. So he needs to keep 2 of these 3: Buddy, Ablett, and Tom McDonald. He thinks all of them have pros and cons. What are your views on McDonald's pre-season prospects this year? Look good in round 1 of the Marsh series. Who would you be keeping, Hef?
Now, I know Cherto, because Cherto was in our league spotlight actually a few weeks ago. So he mentioned that he won the flag last year and he's looking up at trying to win it again this year. So he's probably thinking along the lines keeping Buddy and Ablett because they probably in their heyday would have gone better, but I don't think that's the right option. I think you've got to keep Tom McDonald just because you've got more future potential. Plus, he'll average more than Buddy will this year.
I tend to agree.
Yeah, bet that. And I'd be keeping Ablett just because A, he's not injured, B, he'll get midfield time, and C, he's not a key forward. So
the slow start to Buddy's season, is
it's a
real worry for me.
I don't think his head's in it anymore. He knows that Sydney are in a rebuild. He knows that he's set for life with the cash he's on.
He'll still play and still have some good games, but will he play 20 games? No. He's probably more likely to play 12, 6 or 8 of them being good.
That said, and I don't condone keeping him at all, so he's still third on my list. He's the type that you could play in round 23. I don't know who Sydney are playing, and he could just kick like 7 goals and do something freakish like that.
But the other thing is that you could put him back in the pool and people probably aren't going to touch him till
you probably get him back
anyway.
actually.
You could get him back for a scummy little pick, so nothing to worry about putting him back in the pool. At Trav014, are Tyson and Hall in North Melbourne's best 22, or was that just poor recruiting?
I don't think they are in the best 22. What do you think? At
none
full
of them.
strength?
Aaron Hall, did he play on the week last night?
I don't think so.
None of them did because Dom Tyson was actually named and then never played. So I actually watched that game and I was like, damn, I want to see Dom Tyson actually do something. But
monitor this weekend, obviously. But
this weekend will be a big one. I think Tyson's probably more of a chance. I think he's only 26. Hall's about 29. So if someone's going to have a bit of a second life at North Melbourne, it might be Dom Tyson. But what's he going to score? Third club. There's too many worrying signs. So if you I'd probably avoid But although I wouldn't mind throwing a late or mid to late pick at Dom Tyson just as a roughie this year.
I think the way that Gold Coast gave Hall up, there's something there, something going on that probably doesn't make him in a favourable position right now, I don't
Whether
think.
it's work ethic or something like that.
Something like that. So I'm not sure about Hall. I agree. If you're going to pick two, I'd probably go Tyson just because I think more likely to get an opportunity this season. But look, I don't want either of them on my side, so I'll just be avoiding.
Fair enough. At Follow Craig 11. Is Mark Pitney a genuine chance to unseat or play with Cruiser in 2020 after the weekend's outstanding showing?
Yeah, we touched on this earlier as well, but I think definitely the points per minute numbers were good. He's next in line at Carlton. Cruz is going to get injured anyway, so yeah, he's definitely more than just a handcuffed.
For sure.
Nicholas James, with Hardwick now out for the season, who can we expect to slot into the back six and what are their numbers like? So CJ Juth, Greaves or Scrimshaw. I think Hardwick took a few kick-ins too, you reckon? So who do you think is going to slot in, Case?
I think Scrimshaw's got the better talent of them. He was like a number 7 draft pick a few years ago when he got into the scene. He had a couple games in the 70s last year in the AFL. Some decent scores in the VFL as well. I'm quite keen on him, average 73 in the VFL. I think if he can average something like that in the AFL this year, kind of slotting into his spot, I reckon that's really good. This is going to be as we said before, I think this is going to be the week you want to watch what happens with Hawthorn. So could be a number of players, but could even be Harry Morrison.
Hope not, Kays.
It won't be.
Not. All right. What's the last question?
Last couple. At Henry Katz, how worried should we be about Zach Williams' injury?
Look, if it's that same Achilles, then definitely be worried. He might not be consistent enough or consistently fit enough to rely on, but by the sounds, he could play. Could play the first week. So, could play by round 2. They're saying. So it's only reported to miss round 1 at the moment. So monitor. I think Twitter was going off a little bit over it. It sounded a lot worse than it actually was first feared. So keep monitoring that one. Hopefully, he doesn't miss too much. I don't think. Yeah,
I'm with you there. And lucky last question from at Liam Carroll 08. Pepsi Max or Coke Zero?
Well, this is an easy one. The answer is neither. You only drink Remedy kombucha, Case.
You do only drink Remedy kombucha. This is even a setup.
He's going to round this off nicely, but I'm holding the Remedy bottle to the camera right now, just so our viewers can get a glimpse. This is what you should be drinking. None of this Pepsi Max, none of this Coke Zero.
I do love kombucha, but actually I don't really like Pepsi Max or Coke Zero. I don't like that sweetener taste.
That fake sugar taste.
No, just drink normal Coke if you're going to do it.
Drink some kombucha, mate.
Yeah, but if you're that desperate to drink some caffeinated beverage.
Yeah, I think the idea is they don't want the sugar. And this is I Quit Sugar endorsed kombucha right here. Get on board.
There you go. Start mixing your Bacardi with kombucha. It could be a real game changer.
I don't know if that'll actually taste very nice, but
give it a go.
Yeah, who knows? All right. I was hoping by the end of this case, that wraps up the question. I was hoping by the end of this, I'd be on the clock in the in my startup keeper league here because we're doing a slow draft and we could make a live selection. But in my league, we have Matt Tarrant, who is, I guess, a kind of large Adelaide magician on Survivor a couple of years ago, if you still watch that. And he's on the clock.
Surely he's doing a show.
I know he's currently in a show right now, and I think it wraps up in 1 minute. So he might get on the clock soon, but unfortunately won't be able to do the live pick on the show. So we'll have to tweet out what I actually ended up taking and a few picks. So anyway, we'll wrap the show up then. So basically just get around us on our socials, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Keeper League Pod, at Keeper League Pod. Check those out. The website has so much great fantasy, Keeper League specific fantasy content. Lots coming out. If you want to check out our keepers, I'm sure, Kays, you'll publish the draft results as well, who we end up taking.
Yes.
So those will be up early next week to give you an idea. Lots of drafts probably happening at the moment, I gather by the amount of messages I'm getting in my inbox. So good luck to everyone out there. Okay, sorry, anything else to add?
I'm just saying, I think this is a big week in terms of, figuring out who's in best 22s, etc. So if you can, try and watch as much Marsh this weekend because you get a good feel of, who's replacing Taranto or who's replacing Hardwick. So make sure you tune in and
cancel all other engagements. Don't say see to your missus for a couple of days. Kiss your kids,
bunker down.
Kiss your kids, and lock yourself into your lounge room and really do some study this week because it's going to be a make or break time for fantasy. I think
this is the weekend to do it.
All right, check our socials. Check our links in the description below for all the links to get to all of our content. And we'll wrap it up. So have a good week.
See you guys.